"Give me enough dynamite," said contractor Big Mike Haney, "and I'll build you a railroad to hell." "I shudder to think what might happen if we came off the tracks," remarked the editor, who is always a bit of a nervous Nelly in these types of settings. "There have been a couple of incidents," I replied, "but nothing too serious." Close to 100,000 prospectors sailed to the Alaskan port of Skagway in order to get to the goldfields, aboard the White Pass and Yukon Railroad. It is the thrill of a lifetime, because in places you cannot even see any ground underneath, as you snake your way via trestles and tunnels to the 2,885-foot summit, occasionally catching a glimpse of your cruise ship way down in the harbor, hundreds of feet below. The impossible narrow-gauge railroad was completed in just over 2 years between 1898 and 1900 to save each and every prospector the burden of having to pack 1 ton of supplies by mule over Dead Horse Gulch on their way to the goldfields. Few of them prospered, though a restaurateur named Frederick Trump, grandfather of the 45th U.S. president, struck it rich feeding them all. Skagway is a small community of about 1,200 people that doubles in size to serve 1 million visitors during the cruise season. 6 blocks in the National Historic District downtown preserve memories of pioneering legends such as Jefferson Soapy Smith, the conman who ran a telegraph office for homesick miners, tricking them into paying $5 each to send messages to their families over telegraph lines that didn't even exist. Soapy, who met his demise in a gunfight, is still celebrated in a Skagway musical. I should mention that I once rented a car for the day to drive the 220-mile round trip from Skagway to Whitehorse and back. "I didn't realize Whitehorse was so close," said the editor. "I've always wanted to see it, but there's no chance I would rent a car with you again after what happened when you left only 6 minutes to get back to our ship in Halifax." "I got back to Skagway in plenty of time," I recalled. "But something must have gone wrong," the editor persisted. "Well," I admitted, "I did remember to take my passport, but I didn't realize I was turning on the emergency lights with my knuckle every time I pressed the seek and scan button on the radio." "You are a knucklehead," the editor said flippantly. They apparently stopped flashing after a while, but then I would accidentally turn them on again. I kept doing it, not realizing it was such a poorly designed switch. I pulled over at various spots along the way to take pictures or read history plaques, and people kept asking me, "Is everything okay with you, sir?" I wondered if I should check my pulse, thinking maybe I looked as if I had just suffered a heart attack or something. "Well, you always look like you need help," said the editor. "Look," I protested. I was far enough away from my car not to realize why people were concerned about me. The flashers had stopped by the time I got back to the vehicle, so I didn't realize what was wrong until a bit later. The U.S. border guard on my way back thought I needed help too, even though I kept insisting nothing was wrong. "Well, why do you have your emergency flashers on?" he asked. "Are they still on?" I inquired in dismay. "I can't shut the damn things off." "Why don't you try turning them off with that other switch down there?" the border guard suggested. I looked down and sure enough there was another button that immediately toggled them off. The helpful guard chortled a bit as he waved me through, and somehow I managed to return my car to the rental agency and let them know about their hazard lights. "Customers are expected to familiarize themselves with the controls before they drive off the lot," said the clerk officiously, totting up my bill. "How about I familiarize putting your lights out with my walking stick?" I thundered. Actually, I only imagined saying that, merely snatching my receipt with a lame, "Thank you very much. Guess I'll be on my way then." Otherwise, I arrived back quite satisfied with plenty of time to spare. I suppose you mean about 6 seconds, asked the editor. I had about 26 minutes, I assured him. Don't forget to turn your flashes off, the editor taunted. Back on board, ready to leave Skagway, I spotted a humpback whale across the harbor. It was breaking the surface in different spots every few minutes. There it is, I yelled. But its massively wide flukes kept disappearing beneath the waves before anyone else could see it. I kept pointing at where I last saw it, but a humpback looks for its diet of krill and plankton in different locations below the surface, and then lunges straight up 20 feet or more out of the water, its huge tail quickly propelling it back down again. Our new cetacean friend was now just below the back decks of our ship. Some people had paid big money to go on whale watching tours and hadn't seen anything. Here we were less than 50 feet away, sitting there slurping coffee and enjoying the sunshine, with this entertaining leviathan of the deep feeding right there behind us. Onward now to perhaps the biggest highlight of all. The 6-mile wide, 300-foot-high Hubbard Glacier is one of a minority still advancing in defiance of global warming. Beholding the face of its craggy, pristine blue mass on a clear day is one of those awe-inspiring moments. We approached the glacier through Disenchantment Bay, surrounded by 5 of the 10 highest mountain peaks in North America. Our ship was now rotating through 360 degrees to enable passengers on all sides to see the Hubbard Glacier. We were within earshot of startlingly loud cracks as massive chunks of the glacier periodically broke away and carved into the sea, each of them with a mighty splash. Thank heavens we now have the technology to keep us from hitting an iceberg like the one that sank the Titanic, said the editor. Yep, I replied. Radar had yet to be invented. Juneau, the state capital named after French-Canadian prospector Joe Juneau in 1881, has just over 31,000 people, but remains inaccessible by road as it is surrounded by mountains and the massive Juneau icefield north of the city. I took a 12-mile bus ride to see the Mendenhall Glacier and was shocked by how much it had retreated since I first saw it completely dominating the landscape 20 years previously. I returned downtown to walk along South Franklin Street, which has preserved many of its old historic buildings, such as the Red Dog Saloon, dating from the 1880s. It was a clear enough day, so I went up the Mount Roberts tramway. I wanted to hike the trails beside the 1,800-foot summit, but was confined to the information center because of unstable snow. The viewing platforms satisfied me with some spectacular views of my cruise ship, and several others looking like toy boats down in the harbor far below. 15 miles to the south lay Admiralty Island, keeping me a safe distance from 1,600 grizzly bears, representing the largest concentration of this fearsome species anywhere in the world. When the Johnny Horton rendition of North to Alaska came out in 1960, the editor claims he instantly knew it would be a hit. Its stirring lyrics about Seattle prospectors headed for the gold rush are seldom heard nowadays, but the editor thinks it should be resurrected as a full-fledged theater production for those of us cruising up to the last frontier. I have been on no fewer than 16 Alaska cruises myself, all departing from Vancouver, but most Americans will embark in Seattle, just as the song's protagonists did seeking their fortune in 1892. Sadly, Johnny Horton never lived long enough to fully enjoy the success of North to Alaska. He was killed in a car crash, aged 35, in November 1960, just days before his chart-topping hit, featured as the title song in the far less memorable John Wayne movie of the same name. Rather than a 7-day return cruise, which is too short, I would recommend a return trip of 10 days or more. Even better would be 2 7-day, back-to-back cruises where you can stay on the same ship for 14 days. It makes little sense in my view to cruise one way and then fly back. My next cruise will probably be to Europe, But I never tire of Alaska, and can't wait to cruise its magnificent scenery again. I might once more be lucky enough to avoid the jaws of a bear or the claws of an eagle, spend an hour with a humpback whale so incredibly close up, and meet once again with some unforgettable old friends like Earl and Dorothy from someplace I can't quite remember.
Rupert Flange took an Alaska cruise, hoping those bears didn't spoil the news. Didn't know how much gold he'd find. Cruising with him, you leave your sense behind.